Good evening. It's Friday, August 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. My name is Joe Baker, and as Mayor of Kenedy, Texas, it is my honor and privilege to welcome everyone here tonight and call this special meeting of the Kenedy City Council to order. I will now call the roll and establish whether or not a quorum is present. District 1, Councilmember Cindy Sines.
Here.
District 2, Councilmember John Rodriguez.
Here.
District 3, Councilmember Chris Parker is unable to attend this evening. District 4, Councilmember James Douglas.
Here.
District 5, Councilmember Sandra Schultz.
Here.
4 members of the City Council are present, and there is a quorum present this evening. Please rise for a prayer before we begin. After the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, please be with us this evening as we consider the business of this community as public officials for the people of Kenedy, Texas. Please give us patience and understanding with one another to do what is right and what is best and in the best interest of all the families and all the people who live here in Kenedy. Dear Lord, please, especially during this time, please watch over the families that are suffering due to illness in this community and accidents and other recent unfortunate circumstances. Please be with them in their hearts. Give them comfort and peace. It's for everything we do for you, dear Lord. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, I must apologize to the council for the failure to bring the flag in.
That's on me too. I should have looked for it when I came in.
I apologize.
No problem, sir. The next item on the agenda is under executive session. Number 4, closed session. City Council will meet in closed session pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code in accordance with the authority contained in A, Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property. Is there any discussion or a possible motion in regards to agenda item number 4?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to go into executive session to discuss.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion from Councilmember Rodriguez and a second from Councilmember Sines. At this time, we will convene into executive session. It is 6:03 p.m. It's 6:38 p.m. and we are now reconvening into open session under item number 5 on the agenda. City Council will reconvene in open session, at which time action on the matters discussed in closed session may be considered. Item A, Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property. Council, is there any discussion or possible motion in regard to agenda item number 5?
I'll make the motion to authorize the city manager to sign all documents related to the purchase and acquisition of the property discussed in executive session and to spend city funds in an amount not to exceed $1.5 million related to the purchase and acquisition of the aforementioned property.
We have a motion from Councilmember Douglas. Is there a second?
I second that motion to authorize the city manager to sign all documents related to the purchase and acquisition of the property discussed in executive session and to spend city funds in an amount not to exceed $1.5 million related to the purchase and acquisition of the aforementioned property.
We have a second from Councilmember Sines. Ms. Bevin, if you'll call the roll.
Councilwoman Schultz?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sines?
Yes.
Councilman Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilman Douglas?
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item is item number 6. It is 6:40 p.m. and we will adjourn this meeting this special meeting of the City Council and move on to the workshop. Agenda item number 7, call City Council workshop meeting to order and announce quorum is present. So I will once again call the roll. District 1 Councilmember Cindy Sines.
Yeah, here.
District 2 Councilmember John Rodriguez.
Here.
District 3 Councilmember Chris Parker is not with us this evening. District 4 Councilmember James Douglas.
Here.
District 5 Councilmember Sandra Schultz.
Here.
4 council members are present. We have a quorum. Item number 8, presentation and deliberation regarding the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. Mr. Lynn, do you have a presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. You don't mind if I bring my water with me, do you?
Not a problem.
Do you mind if I take off my mask?
You can take off your mask, sir.
Thank you. Oh, good evening, council, mayor, residents of Kenedy. It's that time of year again. We get to do our budget. Yes. All right, so there's quite a few documents that we're going to go over here tonight. In addition to everything, kind of the way I like to go with this, just so that we're all on the same page, is I'll go over a few documents. I'll stop, ask for questions. If you have any questions about those documents, we'll talk about it, move on, and we'll move on from there, okay? Try to keep everything focused on what we're talking about instead of jumping around. Okay. So if I could get you all to look, okay, so I handed each of you a packet tonight. Okay, and in that packet was some documents. One of them was the salary worksheet that actually had the positions on it with the listed salaries next to it. Also on that, you should have seen the organizational chart should have been on there as well. And then there should have been 2 pie charts. Okay? So what we're going to look at first, 2 pie charts, the organizational chart, the salary worksheet, and then the financial overview sheet, which was on the very top of your packets. Okay, we'll start with that real quick. So before I begin getting into the meat of everything, I would like to give the city of Kenedy, the residents of Kenedy, the council of Kenedy, the mayor of Kenedy, some very good news. Today, I have just learned that the city of Kenedy received its first tranche of $415,413.15 of the ARP funds. Next year, we will get another tranche equivalent to that. And as we discussed earlier in the year when we first learned about this, the majority of this is going to go for the generators for the wells and at the RO plant and that. So based upon earlier estimates of the $600,000, this is well over $800,000 that we're looking at, about $830,000. So once we pay for the generators, we're still going to have money left over we can use for eligible purchases and things of that nature as well. So just let everybody know that did come in today. So we're off and running there. The city of Kenedy is a growing community. There's many ways a community can grow. It can grow land mass wise, it can grow budget wise, it can grow population wise. The city of Kenedy is growing in all areas right now. One of the things that's going on in the city of Kenedy is we have a lot of grant projects going on. We have the sewer grant project going on with Live Oak and Waco. And we have the water line grant project that's going to be going on as soon as we get that signed from the GLO. Okay, so we've got these projects that are going there. The other thing that this budget presents, and all that money is in the budget. The other thing that this budget does this year, if you look at these numbers on this budget, based upon what I was told by prior councils, last year's budget was the first time the city of Kenedy wrote a balanced budget without having to pull money from its reserves to pay its bills in the budget. This year we've done exactly the same thing. Every single dollar that is spent in this budget comes from revenue generation within the city and not reserves. So for 2 years in a row, we've written pretty much a balanced budget without using reserves. So that's something to be said for the city of Kenedy. We do have the employee raises in here again this year, which we're going to go over in a minute. And all the department heads, which I want to thank for taking time to meet with me regarding their budgets. Some of them are here tonight. Some of them aren't feeling so well, so they're not here. But they all had to sit in front of me and justify why they needed stuff, and it wasn't very, they had to squirm. So they all walked away with something. And as we go through this, you'll find out what they're walking away with tonight. So it's a really good budget. And we did accomplish some things in this budget as we get going that each of the council members had mentioned to me about the infrastructure of the city of Kenedy. We do have extra money in there for new roads, to do roads this year, some milling work and some chip seals in addition to make normal road repairs and potholes and things of that, as well as some money that's in there to do water lines and sewer lines, new lines, replace new lines other than just the normal, hey, we got a leak, let's go fix it. So we do have money in there for all that this year. So, all right, so on that first page, that should look fairly familiar to you all, kind of the setup. This is just an overview breakdown. The one side is the general fund revenues, and the other side is the water sewer fund revenues and the airport revenues. And you can see by those numbers, we'll start with the left-hand side. The general fund overall, $7.937 million is what we're projecting to bring into the general fund. And we're projected to spend $7.906 million out of the general fund, which gives us a surplus balance of $30,625 in the general fund. The administration is $3.5 million of that. Animal control is $145,000 of that. The court is $206,000 of that. Code enforcement is $258,000 of that. Emergency management is $1,000. Engineering department is $160,000. The fire department is $161,000. The library is $4,300. The parks department is $432,000 of that. The police department is $1.4 million, and the street department is $1.5 million, roughly, of those numbers there. The water and sewer revenues are projected to be $8.341 million this year, and we have expenditures totaling $8.341 million. With a balance of zero, so they've got a complete balanced budget in those two departments, which are enterprise funds. The water is $6.49 million of that, and the sewer is $1.85 million of that. The airport is projected to have $150,000 in revenues this year. Their expenditures total $133,000, and they have a $17,000 surplus there in their budget. As we go on down, state law requires whenever we start posting everything, when we get done adopting the budget, this cover sheet will post up for some other things for the state. Down there is our debt obligation at a glance. As you can see, we currently have 4 bonds left. And with the fees and everything, the bond debt totals $1.205 million. That's something we have to pay every year. That does include the money for the sports complex, just in case anybody's asking on that one. The cash position is something that's familiar to you all. This cash position is as of the date I did this. We had 8.517 in our tax pool accounts, and then we had 867,000 actual cash on hand in our bank account for a total liquidity of $9.3 million at that time. So we're still pretty strong cash position-wise. And then the very bottom one, that's the property tax rate. This property tax rate that's here is the no new revenue tax rate as calculated by Ms. Broadway for this year. And that tax rate comes in at roughly about 30 cents per $100. And then the breakdown on that is the maintenance and operations portion of that is 21.8 cents. And then the debt part that goes towards our bond debts is 8 cents, just a little over 8 cents there. So when we get to the portion of this whole process where you all will be actually considering the tax rate, this is the no new revenue tax rate. The way the state of Texas does it now is that this particular tax rate is not permitted for a voter referendum because it's not higher than the voter approved tax rate. So this basically is just an adoption from you guys when we get to that point. But that's the tax rate I project that we will be at for this particular budget. Okay. As we turn the page over, you can see the colored page right here. is the list of all the salaries that we have in the city of Kenedy. The very first column to the left is the positions that we have in the city of Kenedy by title. And then as we move over one column, that is the current hourly rate for that particular position that goes right next to it. If you move over one more column, that is the hourly rate times for full-time employees. That is the hourly rate times 2,080 to get their salary number for the year. Okay, that right there, I'm going to stop right there. That number right there is where they are today, as we're speaking right now. Okay, as we move forward with the adoption of the budget, we're proposing a 3% COLA increase on those numbers. So then we move in to the next set of columns. The next column is the salary number at 3%. So if you take the salary, current annual salary, multiply times 1.03, that's the number you get in that column, okay? And then you have the hourly rate, which is the same thing. You take the hourly rate times the hourly rate, 1.03, and you get that number. So a COLA is just a cost of living increase. This is something that we as a municipality just give our employees for the cost of living. The CPI went up 4.2% for the year. We're giving them 3% as a COLA. So we're actually a little bit below the CPI for the year on that, but it's still something for the employees to have, based in addition to some of the other things we've done for them this year. The next section over there is the proposed annual salary merit increase. Okay, so COLA is everybody, all employees get the COLA. It doesn't matter if you're a superstar employee or just someone who's just saying you get the COLA. But the merit increase is based upon their annual reviews, which is based upon a scale of 0 to 5, and where they fall and what percentages goes in there. So the maximum amount they can get is an additional 2.5% of their rate. So provided that someone scores the number, which I think is like a 4.4 or 4.5 on their review, and they get the 2.5%. If everybody scored that 2.5%, that would be the next two columns worth of salary numbers. That's what the numbers would go to there. So you take the 3% COLA number and you multiply that number times 1.025, and you come up with the next set of numbers there. That's how we arrive at that number. Okay? And this happens all the way down the board. You can just look at the list of people and just follow it all the way across. You can see the salaries increasing as they go across the board. If you look at the very, very far right-hand column where it says the departments, engineering, water, sewer, parks, you come all the way down to the very bottom there in yellow, it tells you that we're increasing salaries total by 5.57%. So the difference between the first number and the very last number is 5.57%. So we're actually raising our salaries by 5.57% across the board this year, which is in line with what we did last year. And that total raise is just a little bit more than the CPI. If you want to pay for something, it's about a point higher than the CPI. So we have that. The next sheet there is the organizational chart, which I was asked to do, which I did. I updated that organizational chart to add a couple of positions to it. We added the Assistant City Secretary, Event Coordinator, Mr. Sharness's position to that, as well as Assistant Public Works Director's position to that as well. But other than that, that's the only difference between this particular organizational chart and the organizational chart you all were provided when I first created it and originally posted it online. Okay? Okay, so if we look at the first pie chart is revenues. I did this just to kind of show you guys the percentages of the total, where the revenues from the city of Kenedy are coming from. Okay, so, we could say we got revenues, but the question today is, well, where does the money come from, right? Well, if you look at this in big purple, 41% of our revenues in the city of Kenedy comes from water. 25% of it comes from sewer. 18% comes from taxes. 13% comes from just other income. That would be like trash collections, things of that nature. And 3% comes from fines and fees. So you can see real quick at a glance just about where the revenues come from to give you an idea of where we're getting our revenue, where we get our money from. So I find that to be helpful. I hope you do too. The next pie chart, that's the expenditures pie chart. So I did one for the revenues, I did one for the expenditure. So the question becomes is, well, we know where our money's coming from. Where's our money going? So we take a look at this, and 27% of our money goes to salaries, which in any business, that is your number one largest expense anyway. And we are only spending 27% in salaries. I know a lot of businesses spend a lot more than that. Benefits is 9%. PPE and V, and that stands for property, plant, equipment, and vehicles. And those are purchases, and anything related to that would be 11%. Projects in the city is 19%. Operations, that's just what we do every day, how we keep the lights on and maintain business every day, is 24%. And then debt, that little section of debt is 10% of our expenditures. So kind of give you a little visualization of where it comes from coming in, where it comes from going out, those kind of things. So right there, I'll stop briefly if anybody has any questions on any of that stuff. Okay? Very good. Moving on then. The first thing I want to start with is the general fund. That will be the first set of papers that you have. It should be, the first page on that should say General Fund Income, City of Kenedy. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 column paper. It kind of looks like this right here. Okay? And then, so we'll start with that. And this just kind of gives you an overview of the 2020 revenues, the 2020-21 actual budgets, where we were as of the end of June, and then what the projections are for this coming year. So our ad valorem taxes, we're projecting just the maintenance and operations portion to be around $404,058. Okay, and the INS $154,258. This is a decrease. We've had a decrease in valuations with that. And just so to go along with that ad valorem, I did give you guys, and it's on the Karnes County Tax Assessor's website, but I went ahead and gave it to you guys. It's the 2021 tax rate calculation worksheet. You have that. It shows all the tax rate calculations, certified rolls, how they came up with the numbers, what our potential levies are for each various thing, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? And kind of walk through that a little later. Just so you know, valuations did go down this year. That's why tax rates automatically go up, so that you can stay at the same rate. But we're staying at the same revenues. Then we get into the franchise taxes, which is your right-of-way fees, things of that nature. We have natural gas, electric, telephone, cable, solid waste. Those are coming in at about $165,000 this year. Then we get into our sales taxes this year, and we're projecting to do about $1.563 million in sales taxes, which is a decrease from this past year, which is to be expected from last year's. Sales taxes run about 3 months behind, so we really are just now starting to see the effects of COVID last year. So we want to go ahead and just keep that. And some of these numbers are going to be modest in projections. I probably could, bump some of these numbers up if we really wanted to get gutsy with the budget, but I'd rather have a lower number and come in a little higher than a too high of a number and be wondering why I'm lagging behind my revenues. Permits and fees are coming in about $30,000. I kept that number static this year. I anticipate we'll be doing about the same in building this year. We're still waiting on one development to start developing, and that one will bring in some revenues from building permits and fees when they start breaking ground there. The total fine section, this is our municipal court and our code compliance and our animal control. This is anything that has to do with a fine or anything, is looking at $276,700. That's kind of in line with where we were as of June 30th. It's a bump up. The court is seeing more cases closing and more people paying. So just felt we'll just leave that one alone there. Our garbage collection coming in $729,000. This is what we actually make on garbage collection. So when you get your water bill in the mail, and it has water, sewer, and trash. That trash portion goes into that $729,000. And based upon number of trash cans and people paying and this and that, so we did we budgeted $754,000 this past year. We're about $546,000 at the end of June. I figured $729,000 is a realistic number to look at for this year to account for various fluctuations in that. Rents, the auditorium, the pavilion, the gazebo, the complex. We've got that set at about $5,100. I purposefully did not put any money in there for the sports complex, even though we brought in $33,000 this past year. It'll take 3 years of revenues at the sports complex before we can begin to benchmark that and start to find a trend that we can budget a dollar amount logically. Last year, I'll give you a good example. One of the reasons why we did so much last year was Mr. Hernandez was getting phone calls for UIL games because it was pouring down rain and people were getting rained out, and we had a turf field and they were scheduled to play on a grass field. So he was getting a lot of last minute calls. If it doesn't rain this year like it did last year and it's dry, those people may not call us this year. So, we want to get a history of what we're doing, get about a 3-year history so we can go back and start averaging that out. If we see it growing, it'll be easier to project it out into the future. If we see it running static, it's easy to say that we're looking at about a $30,000 a year revenue stream. So, but it's just too early this year to put any money in that category, so that's why you see a goose egg there. So then we get down into the next section, which is other revenues, and this includes transfer from the general surplus, which that's where, you see that number for our actual budget of 4.2. That's where we transferred money to buy the properties we were buying. When we paid for the UP Union Pacific right away, that's in that 4.2 million, and a lot of the other things we did are in that 4.2 million as well. That's a zero because that's not a budgeted line item. I don't budget transfers from reserves, so we keep that one zero. That's a council decision that we make. Transfers in from the water department. Okay, so in most municipalities that are, I don't want to say this, that have a very low tax rate, like Kenedy does, you have to find sources of revenue to fund your general fund. And they transfer revenues from their water and sewer department revenues, their enterprise funds, into their general fund to help offset expenses for property taxes. Okay. So if any of you ever watched what I did last year on Facebook Live, where I did the budget workshop thing, and I explained how you generate money and all that kind of stuff. Your enterprise fund is exactly that. It's an enterprise fund. It's a business, and its goal is to make money. That is its goal. Its goal is not to break even at the end of the day. It's to make money. So if we're going to be in the business of selling water, we need to make money at selling water. Okay. If we're going to be in the business of sewer sales, we need to make money at doing this. That's why these funds exist. So we're transferring $3.6 million over from their revenues so that we can afford to pay all the departments that fall under the general fund that are not revenue or enterprise fund departments, such as your street department, your police department, your courts, your animal control, and all these departments we're going to go over. Those departments don't generate revenue, and you've got to fund them somehow. And that's where that money comes from. Now, that money also comes over to help pay the debt, because the debt in the city of Kenedy is not traditional debt. The people who sat at the bench before you, they went out and created debt for this town, and instead of creating debt the right way and pegging it to the property taxes under the interest and sinking portion, the INS, which goes away over time, they put it to revenue. So they have handicapped the revenues of the city of Kenedy by $1.2 million. So that's $1.2 million we could have to spend that we don't have. So that money comes over here because we write those checks from the general fund. So that money transfers over to the general fund from the water department. The fire district gives us about $145,000. And then the one debt that we do have that we can recoup any remuneration off of is the sports complex, and that's the 4B who writes that check to us. So we pay that debt and they reimburse us, and we've talked about it before. That's where that $487,000 come from. We add that back in because they actually write us that check to reimburse us that money. So we keep on going down, and we got police seized funds and those kind of things we can't do anything about. Administration fees from the 4B, that more or less just goes for the time that the city secretary spends doing things for the 4B corporation, or Miss Judy spends doing things for the 4B corporation, and that helps offset their expenses a little bit as they're doing things for the 4B. And so we keep going down. We've got your student resource officer reimbursement. Our student resource officer is at 75%. What that means is whatever her salary and benefits total package is, KISD reimburses us 75% of all that. So we put that in there as that comes back into us as well. Scrap metal recycling, so to run that out. Our total other revenue comes in about $4.3 million. So you can see where that number comes from. And then we have ancillary services, fax service, copiers, NSF fees, about $17 there. Then we get into our oil revenues. Now, our royalty revenues are calculated a little different. Okay? Our royalty revenues are based upon production of oil, production of natural gas. So how can you budget them? See, what I do is, in order to get this number, is I go out and I look at the prior year. October 1 is where I start. October 1, 2020. And then I go 6 months out future from there. And then another 6 months from there. So I go 12 months to September 30th of 2021. And I take a look at the beginning number, the 6 month number, and the 1 year number. And I look to see if it's going up or down. Then I look at the budget year I'm going into, which is 21-22. And I do the same thing. October 1, and then 6 months from there, and then 6 months from there. I look at those numbers, see where they're going, and I peg those numbers to the prior year's numbers to see if those numbers are up or down, just to get a gauge of where we're headed. But what I'm really looking at is I'm really looking at those numbers on the futures market to see where those numbers are going to go between October 1 of 2021 and September 30th of 2022. And I'm looking at both the West Texas Intermediate oil, which is the sweet, which is what most people look at, and then the natural gas. And then I'm pegging those numbers to see where they're going, and I take the beginning numbers and the end numbers, subtract them, and figure out did it go up or down by how much, and then I take the oil number and the gas number and peg those numbers to see if the total's going up or down, and then whatever that number is where we go. For this particular year, what we run into is that the difference is 1.364% down. Everything is projected to go down overall over the next year, I mean. So when you take the oil prices and what they're pegging to be in 12 months, and you take the natural gas prices and what they're pegging, and you do their ups and downs amongst them, and then you average the two together, you get 1.364 down. So I took 1.364 down, multiplied that times our revenues for last year, and that gives us our projection for this year in our royalties. So, and it's a pretty close number. It gets us pretty close on that. So, before we get into the expenditures, any questions on these revenues? Okay, very good. All right, so first set of expenditures, if you flip that page, is the administration. And these are all going to go in order. So what we have is the administration was allotted $3.502 million. At the very top, you'll see that top number is what we allotted it. The second number is what was allocated in the budget below it, $3.471 million. And then the number in yellow is how much money is remaining to be spent. And that budget comes in as a surplus of $30,625. Okay? So as we go down here, you see all your basic things. Your salaries, $471,000. The accounting and audit, that's Mr. Allman's fees, $18,000. Elected officials, that's you guys, $15,600. Health insurance at $85,100. Payroll taxes. Now, payroll taxes, just so you know, whenever you are in a business, everybody pays taxes. But the employer pays 7.65% of the taxes for your Social Security and Medicare and all that. So that's our liability that we have to pay is that $36,000. The $44,000 for TMRS, if you look at that number versus the current budget of $15,000, that number jumps. Okay? Remember what we did at the last council meeting. We went from a 1-to-1 match to a 2-to-1 match. That is the realization of the 2-to-1 match right there. I said we had it in the budget, and we did, because we have a balanced budget in front of you right now. But that's what it cost us to take care of our employees at a 2-to-1 match. We go from $15,000 in expenses to $44,000. So that's our commitment. TWC unemployment, $5,100. Pre-employment screening, $300. Office supplies, it's pens, pencil, papers. And we go through a lot of paper at City Hall machine, $8,000. Postage, $12,500. That includes all the postage that runs through the meter for us that we have with the utility billing and all that kind of stuff. We have the Thanksgiving, Christmas meals and events at $6,000. Now that's the hams, the turkeys that we give the employees at Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's the Christmas dinner that we do. That's all the meals, like we've had the appreciation meals and all that kind of stuff that we do for the employees. That's all in that dollar amount there. Uniforms, $2,000. That's the uniforms for the office staff that we're doing. $65,000 for attorney fees. Fuel and oil, we do have a truck here that we use, and that's for that, or if we need to send somebody to use their personal vehicle for something, we pull it out of there to reimburse them for gas and that kind of thing as well. Janitorial supplies, about $1,000. Operating supplies, that's anything that's not an office supply that we would consume, maybe masks, things of that nature, these covers for this microphone, things of that nature that we would do. Cell phones includes y'all's cell phones at $4,500. Telephones are our landlines, $4,500. Equipment rental at $1,400 this year. We don't really have a lot of equipment that we really need to rent here in City Hall. Advertising at $2,400. That's for everything that we do, all the notices that we run, that kind of stuff. I got to watch my eyes here. $4,500 for utilities. $8,000 for utilities. Sorry, get a piece of paper here so I can not get blindsided here. Contract labor, $70,000. This is our Tyler Technology fee that we pay Tyler Technologies for our Encode in that, as well as our IT people, our web person that we were paying, any of these type of people that we do. This is where this money goes. We pay Tyler Technologies right around $29,000 right now, and that number's going to be a little bit more because we just put the court on the cloud as well, so we'll have that charge as well. So that's all there. Bonds, that's the bonds for the governing body and the staff at $350. We have insurance, our insurance on our buildings, our general liability insurance, our errors and omissions. Errors and omissions insurance is more or less, if you say something and something happens, it protects the city from what you say in case you say bad information out there and it becomes liable. Insurance on our vehicles, workers' comp. Those numbers went up a little bit this year. R&M on the building, $4,000. That's a pretty good number. We budgeted $4,000 last year, which is interesting that it's been about $4,100 when you consider all the work we did here at City Hall building rooms and things of that nature to make City Hall look the way it's looked. So that's a static number. R&M equipment, just anything that's repair and maintenance on our equipment. If the vehicle needs tires that we have, or needs an oil change, anything that's that. Maintenance agreements and contracts, $2,000 there. That's like our copier and things of that nature. Dues and subscriptions of $5,000. Unfortunately, you have a professional city manager, professional city secretary. We have dues that we have to pay every year to organizations and things we have to do. And that's where that money goes to right there for both of us. Publications, that would be any of the books that we get, blue books, things of that nature, the countywide, all that goes into that right there. Bank charges, the election expense, cost of elections, credit card fees at 11.5. Codification of ordinances, that's our muni code. Training seminars for the staff, again, we all have training we have to do. Training seminars for the council, that's the newly elected officials seminar that you all go to, or the TML conference that you may go to, the annual conference. That's where that money comes from to budget for all that kind of stuff. Property, plant, equipment purchase. If we buy anything, that's where that goes. If we buy a new vehicle, it goes under vehicle purchase. Transfer to debt service fund, $1.26 million. That's our debt we talked about earlier. Okay. Trash service expense. That's what we actually pay Waste Connections to pick up our trash. So we get paid, and we turn around and we give them money. Tax collection for the appraisal board, we have to pay them about $6,500. We pay the county a percentage of our ad valorem. That turns out to $55,000. We have to pay their attorneys $4,000. We turn right around and we have to pay a percentage of our sales tax to the 4B. And this year they can plan on getting $516,000. It's down from last year, but their number is based upon the sales taxes that we get, so it's a variable number. Sales taxes go down, they get less. Sales taxes go up, they get more. And then grants, we have $1,000 in grants that we just put there just to keep that category open because we've got some grants coming through the city. Any questions on the administration?
Why did we increase on our cell phones?
You all have cell phones, that's why.
I don't.
Everybody else does.
But that's a big increase, $2,300.
Yes, sir. Each cell phone is $600 a year. 5 members of the governing body is $3,000 a year. Yes, ma'am.
Council training, why did that go up?
So y'all have more money to go to stuff? I have. Okay, so I don't know if you remember last year, okay? But last year when we did this, the governing body didn't seem too concerned about doing any training. There was only maybe one counselor that did anything, so we could put less there. This year we were going to send 4 people to a training. Mayors attended a training. So we have a governing body who is more active. So you got to have more money in there to cover your expenses. Okay. Anything else? Okay, good. All right, moving on to the next one. That's the Animal Control Department. They had a budget of $145,646, and they spent all $145,646, so they have a complete balanced budget. Just running down there, we have 2 gentlemen in that department. Salaries are projected to be $76,594 for their salaries for the year. Professional legal services, $5,000. Again, you get into the same stuff here: the health insurance, payroll taxes, TMRS, workers' comp, longevity pay, TWC unemployment, all that stuff's just cost of business with the salaries. Those are benefits we provide. Pre-employment drug testing, if we either have to hire a third person or whatever, we got to have money in that budget to cover that cost there. Office supplies, about $500. They don't really mail too much out, so they don't have any postage. Uniforms, that's the uniforms they wear, that's uniform rentals on a yearly basis. Fuel and oil for their vehicles, about $2,000. Janitorial supplies, that would be cleaning supplies they use down at the kennel. That's not the special chemicals that they use, so they kind of have basic supplies they can get, and they have other chemicals that they get that they use, like bleach and things of that nature, for sterilization and those things. And they have operating supplies that they need. That would be like bike gloves, things of that nature, that they would wear to protect themselves, that kind of stuff. They do have cell phones, so there's $1,200 there. Telephone and internet, they do have a landline down there, which is $3,000. Their utilities are $2,500. Then you've got your insurance on the buildings, general liability, equipment, errors of omission, and vehicle. And really, I need to stop right there. I just need to make a clarifying statement. We get one bill for all those insurances. We allocate it out percentage-wise to each department. So whether or not that number goes up or down doesn't matter. Okay, all that matters is that the total bill we get, the total bill we pay, equals what we budgeted in those line items. And when I came to the city of Kenedy, they were paying quarterly. We've gone from quarterly pay to an annual pay. We pay one time a year. So when we get that $100,000 bill, we pay $100,000. We get a 2% discount for paying up front. The city of Kenedy was paying a surcharge when I got here, so we're actually saving money by paying up front. So just so you all know that. Repair and maintenance on the building, they need to add kennels or repair the building down there. Repair and maintenance on equipment they might have, they might need to fix. Repair and maintenance on vehicles, $3,000. You never know what's going to happen to a vehicle. If you need a tranny or a drive shaft or something, it's going to cost you. I don't have any maintenance agreements. They do have some dues that they pay, which aren't a lot. Training for the guys, $1,000. Chief Ash wanted to get them some equipment. He wanted to get them a lift for the bed of the truck so that they don't have to lift up. It would drop down, kind of like an elevator lift, and then lights for the truck. So we put money there to get that for the guys. And then vehicle purchase. Nothing.
And I thought we had a truck that had a lift on it.
We do. We have 2 trucks.
So we can't swap those trucks out instead of buying a new truck? Are we buying a new truck for $4,000?
We're going to buy a new lift to put on the back of the other truck, and then lights for the other truck. We have 1 truck with a lift, 1 truck without.
You have 2 lifts instead of 1.
Right. That way, each member of the animal control will have a lift, so they're not throwing out their back or anything, lifting a dog or something. So, okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Lem, this animal control seems to be a sore spot in the city of Kenedy. I get complaints about it all the time. Would this be a good opportunity for us to maybe beef up that budget to help it do a more effective job? I was thinking in terms of, so instead of having two employees, perhaps expanding to 3, maybe 1 supervisor and 2 workers underneath that supervisor. Would that help us to do a lot more effective job in animal control?
Yes and no. Okay. Small municipalities, you always have issues, and most of it's cats, because once cats get out, they run rampant, and they breed like rabbits, and people just don't really care. They'll continue to feed a stray cat, and then the next thing you know, have 20 stray cats and things of that nature. Part of the problem is that, from what I've seen since I've been here, it's not that we need another person, it's that we need stronger enforcement. We need to send a message to the residents of Kenedy that if your dog's found loose once, we'll be nice. If your dog's found loose again, come get him from the pound. And that's the end of that discussion. When people start losing their dogs to the pound, they'll start taking care of their dogs and keep them locked up. That's part of the problem. I mean, I'll go down East Main, I'll see the same 3 dogs running loose all the time down East Main. And, talk to the owner numerous times. You get your song and your dance. And at what point do you draw the line in the sand and say enough's enough? I think what we're working on here, because animal control is under the police department now, so we're working on taking what we have and strengthening that before we bring in somebody else. It doesn't do us any good to bring in the 3rd person if we're not already strong in the other 2. And Ernie does a great job for us, but this other guy's brand new. And so he's got to learn and get seasoned before we can bring in somebody else. But it is something Chief and I have discussed, beefing that department up at some point in time. Just not right this very second. So that's kind of where we are.
That's what we need to go with that. We need to, like, I agree with you on that part about, you give a person one warning and that's it. The next time, pick the animal up. Because I have in the past dealt with some people where they didn't pick the animal up. I called on that animal. They came and talked to the person, and the animal stayed there. And then the next day, I see the animal running free again. So, I don't agree in adding more people. We need to get the guys that we got to enforce the law.
Right.
How do we achieve that, though? I mean, is it through training, or is it by establishing policies and procedures that there's no flexibility on the part of the employee where they can't look the other way? How do we get there? So holding a more firm line.
That's actually a really good question, man. So I am going into my second year with City of Kenedy. First year, it was what it was. I got a good overview of what's going on in town. And I know where we are. I know where we want to be. I have a good idea of where the governing body would like to be at some point in time. In order to get there, we've got to start doing these things. And that's exactly what the focus is. The focus is starting to change onto enforcement of everything. Okay? So what we do is we have to first make sure our guys are trained. Always make sure they're trained. Training is number one priority for anything like this. Okay? Then it also has to be followed up with policy and then a zero tolerance. And it really has to be a zero tolerance. And when we say zero tolerance, we've got to mean zero tolerance. But it's tone at the top, okay? That's a leadership term called tone at the top. But really, and forgive me guys, but tone at the top starts with you. If I'm going to implement a zero policy, I have to have the 100% confidence that when I tell John Q. Public, I'm sorry that your dog is gone, but you violated this. When they pick up the phone and they call their local council member, the local council member has to be there and say, I'm sorry, John, but your dog is gone because you didn't follow this, and the city manager's done this, and animal control's done this. So tone at the top starts with y'all. So I agree. This is how we have to do it. In the history of the city of Kenedy has been anybody in Kenedy can get whatever they want if they lambast their counselor enough. And that's not right. That is not government. You all work for the people, that is true. But you all aren't there to be lambasted against by the people. You have a job to do to move this community forward. It's like I said in my interview, and Councilor Sines might remember I said it. I do everything I can in the city of Kenedy for 3,500 people, not for a sect of 30. 30 people do not run this town. That is the tail wagging the dog. The dog must wag the tail always. So I have no problem having a zero tolerance. I think we know that.
Well, the point is that the way I deal with the public is that my interaction with the public, because I do go out and interact a lot with the public. I think you know that already. And I always point out to them, that's your dog. You have a responsibility, number one. Don't get mad at the city of Kenedy when your dog is chasing somebody's little girl trying to bite him. If that was happening to me, I'd be very upset. If one of my grandkids was being chased, and in a different circumstance, you'd have to take action. If a police officer's not there, but people should understand that when you tell them you're in violation of a city ordinance, that animal is running at large. We have an ordinance that says that, and I'm okay with our employees saying, look, I'm going to give you this one warning. If I come back again, I'm picking this animal up. Because that's working with the public and also representing yourself as a council member representing the city of Kenedy. Okay? A person that doesn't see that they know that, hey man, I'm not doing my part. See? But our guys have to have the authority also, to say, look, I'm giving you one chance. Take care of this problem. If not, if I get another call, that animal's going to the pound. You can call a council member, you can call the city manager, you can call the mayor, but it is what it is.
And the problem with that is it's reflective on their monthly report. reports. There are 2 citations in a month when there's $10,000 on the streets. I see them, everybody sees them, and when they, and I've seen it, I have friends who have dogs who deal with it next door, and animal control drives by, and they beg to keep the dog, and they don't take the dog. And then in the evening, next day, they're out again. And I'm not sure which one it was, but they have video, they have pictures, but animal control doesn't have an email that they can send them to? That's what they're told. We don't
Well,
know.
if
I don't know what the procedure is. Nobody does.
If not having an email is an issue, we could easily resolve that.
Well, he has one. It's on the website. Does he not have one?
He should have one. Okay? We found out there was one on the website that was there for an individual that was not working. So we need to make sure, we need to follow up with that, and I'll make sure we follow up with that and make sure we have a good working email for that.
Because I think if they're actually, actively, you can drive anywhere and you can see a dog, a loose dog. But it's reflected on their monthly reports when they're only giving out 2 citations. It doesn't make sense.
But also, let's keep one thing in mind too. Okay, we all need to also look at this from 30,000 foot view. We are a small municipality with so many kennels. We've only got so many kennels we can use. We can only keep the animals for so long to begin with, and then they've got to go someplace. They go to the Humane Society right outside of town, which I believe is a no-kill shelter. Okay, so if we pick up $100, do they have the capacity to take $100? See, so the other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go out and we're going to have to make partnerships with other places to take the animals, so that when they're done being done here, we can take them elsewhere for them to be adopted out. Okay, and we've got to have those systems in place first. Also, let's keep in mind the fact that Ernie worked by himself for a very long time. Okay. And so, yes, while there was an issue before Ernie was by himself, working by yourself only exacerbates that issue. Now we've got him some help, and now we've got to give them an opportunity to see what they can do and how they can impact they can make. So, yes, ma'am.
This is just from experience in my neighborhood, living there since 1985. There are many dogs that are loose. I would love to take advantage of my neighborhood to be able to walk my dogs. My dogs are in my yard. I even have an electric fence surrounding my yard so that I'm protecting the neighborhood from my dogs. I don't want them jumping out. I'm protecting my dogs as well as people. But I cannot even take my dogs in my neighborhood for a walk leashed because of other people's dogs running loose and me getting attacked. I've been attacked 5 times from other people's dogs, and the dogs are still in the company of their owners. After numerous reports, even police reports, the dogs are still, and they do still get out. We just don't walk anymore. I can't even ride a bicycle in my neighborhood. We cannot take any joy in the neighborhood because of other people not tending to their animals properly. So with all of that being said, I'm not really going to, chow down on anybody,
Right.
But could we, as a council, new council body, put it in the paper? I mean, does anyone even really know what the policies are on pets? What is I think many years ago, there was a certain amount of species being able to be owned in one particular yard that had to be behind fences, leashed when they're out. There are actual ordinances.
There are ordinances.
Nobody knows.
They're all
It's on
online,
Unicode.
but they're very
But
lengthy.
for those of us who don't go online and look at those things, could it not be published as a, hey, here's a reminder, and guess what? We now have a new city employee. We have an extra animal control officer, and we are coming out in force. So here's a list of the rules. this is what's going on. You have a one chance policy, that's it. We're gonna warn you one time, and then we're gonna hit you in the pocket, because I think they need to be fined as well as take the dog, or the cat, you know.
Well,
I think they should be
I have a
fined,
question.
and when you start hitting them in the pocket, that's when they're gonna start paying
And a
attention.
lot of times they're going to plead not guilty and it's going to sit in court forever and ever.
I don't think you can plead not guilty if you pick
Really?
up someone's
It's not
pet.
a belief.
How is that
I
possible?
work there and it.
That's
all the time.
completely ridiculous. It
I have
should
a- I
not
have
be
a
allowed.
question.
And the
Yes.
first thing they'll
Is
say
there anything in our ordinances that requires that we pick up the dog? Like kind of bouncing off what Counselor Schultz said. For example, like my mind, you know, my police mind, you don't have to arrest somebody every time, right? So you write them a ticket, you let them go. If we don't have to pick up the dog every time.
So are you saying
Obviously,
your
if you have a
discretion-
mitigating, if you have a, yeah, if you have a mitigating circumstance where you have, oh, the dog bit someone, okay, that's different. But if the dog's just running around and the owner's like, well, I want my dog back. Okay, great. Take your dog, put him inside, here's your ticket. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
You know.
What I would need to do is this, because if you would just bear with me, but we're kind of getting off of what we're supposed to be here for now. This is more policy than budget, what we're talking about. So what I need to do first, along the lines of what you've asked for, is I need to do a deep dive into the ordinances to see if I can truncate some of that applies to most of the issues and create a smaller document that we can publish. Okay, I need to do that. The other thing along those lines is that we do need to come back at some point in time and revisit the fees and fines, which we will, okay, come back and we will visit all the fees and all the fines in the city of Kenedy, and we will set that policy. And all of that will be published under a fees and fines section on the website. Okay, so that will be published as well. But that's just something that we need to, I need to take a look at all that and then come back to you guys and say, okay, we were missing an ordinance that would cover this. Guys, tonight at this council meeting, here's the ordinance that covers this, okay? And that's how we handle all of that, okay? So I'll take a look at it.
It just would be helpful for people that don't have access to go on the internet and see what, and I can promise you probably, 65% of the population does not have a clue there's even ordinances on pet ownership here.
Yeah, Sandra, I think what you're talking about is educational efforts.
Absolutely.
And I think that could be addressed through the police department's social media accounts. There's ways to do maybe an animal control tip of the week or something like that. Because you're right, there's a lot of people in town who just simply don't know what the ordinance states, what the requirements are. And so I think that any efforts we can make to educate the public would be very worthwhile.
That's exactly what it's all about, educate the public
Yeah.
about it.
So I'll look.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the budget portion? Okay, moving on to the fire department. Fire department was given $161,675 to spend. They spent all $161,675. Okay. So they don't have any salaries because they're volunteer. Professional services, accounting, legal fees, engineering if they ever needed it, some money in there. Their pensions are $1,856. There's a little money in there for health insurance that we budgeted out for them. Sometimes volunteer fire departments have a little policy that you get that covers their health insurance, things of that nature. So we spent money there on that for them this year. No TMRS. They are covered under our workers' comp. The fire call stipend, that fire call stipend is for them going to trainings and fire calls. If they attend so many fire calls, so many trainings in that, at the end of the year, they get a check based upon the percentage of the number of everything they attended. So we are allowed to pay that. No unemployment, no longevity, office supplies about $250. They do mail a few things, so we put $100 in their postage just to make sure. Chief and them asked for money for uniforms. These would be uniforms that they could wear out when they're doing events, like we had the opening of the training center, things of that nature. All the guys could have nicer uniforms to wear, that kind of thing. So we put some money there for them to have some uniforms this year and get some stuff, maybe a polo shirt or a button-up shirt, whether it be a fishing shirt or whatever. Fuel and oil, they do a good job on that. their vehicles, janitorial supplies, cleaning, operating supplies, anything that's not, again, not office supplies. They do like the gloves, and kitty litter for cleaning up the spills, gas and all that kind of stuff. Cell phones, Chief does have a cell phone. They do have a landline and internet over there. Natural gas, they have natural gas heats their building, and other utilities, so that's electric. Contracted services, the pest control. They do have to have allocations for the buildings, for the insurance for the buildings, the general liability, the equipment, the errors and omissions, and the vehicles. Put $2,500 in for them to do some work around the building. I think they mentioned to me this year that they'd like to work on the roof a little bit. I think Jose is going to help work on the roof, which will help cover some labor costs there. So got that taken care of. Equipment issues, that's not vehicles, it's like their SCBAs, things like that, jaws of life, those kind of things. Repair and maintenance on vehicles, if they need anything for their vehicles, maintenance agreements and contracts, things they've got out there they're doing there, dues and subscriptions. The guys do have to pay for some things there. We did bump up their training to $5,000. That was something that we discussed with them when we were in our workshop and everything. We were going to give them more money for that. The chief felt that was a fair number. This next line item is a bombshell for you guys. I say it like that because it's $80,000, and it's $80,000 just for equipment, and it's for equipment for a brand new brush truck that we're buying. Okay, we put in $150,000 for a brand new vehicle in the budget year that we're in. The fire department has gone out and found a brand new brush truck, which they need to replace the old brush truck. We've got it set up. All I've got to do is finish getting the documents back. It's going to come in about $195,000. They have $150,000 in their budget. They also have extra money that's in an account that the city owns that can make up the difference. So they're not out the money whatsoever. We have the money for them to get that truck. So they're going to get a brand new brush truck. And that $80,000 in the next budget year is what they're going to use to outfit that truck. So just so you all know that. And as you can see on that bottom line, vehicle purchased $150,000. That's what they're pulling for the brush truck. And then they're not getting another truck in 21, 22 because they're getting this truck in their outfit. Okay. So Chief Brian was a part of all this, and he was happy with what we were doing. So we're all good there. Any questions?
They were okay with the stipend going
Yes.
down a little bit?
Yeah, I actually took that stipend down because they spent just under $18,000 this year, and Chief Brian and I talked about it, and I couldn't justify putting $2,000 in there for an event that may not happen. My logic behind that's real simple. If indeed you do have to stay here because unfortunately an event happens, we will come back and we'll make an adjustment to take care of it. So it's always easier to do that than okay. So the next department was code compliance. They were given $258,859.98, and they spent every penny of it. So they have a budget balanced budget there. It is now that one is actually budgeted for 3 people, and I left that alone. I did that on purpose, and the reason I did that was because we can either have 3 people in that department, or we can take that third person and put them in another department somewhere else. So if we did, like Mayor suggested, find out that we needed to add another animal control officer, I do have one person budgeted in a slot that's not filled that could be moved and transferred to another department if we needed to. But right now it's in code compliance because that's where it was. So that's 3 people budgeted right there. Professional services, legal fees, health insurance, payroll taxes, TMRS, workers' comp, all those numbers are the cost of doing business. There is no longevity pay because nobody in code compliance has been with us a year, so they don't get any longevity pay. You've got to be with us a year to get longevity pay. TWC employment, a drug screen, just in case we did hire that person there. Office supplies, again, pen, pencils, paper, clips, things of that nature. Postage, he does send out quite a bit of postage. But we do pick up some of that postage as well at City Hall, so put a fair amount in there. Uniforms, again, that's the least amount. fuel and oil for the vehicle. Janitorial supplies for cleaning, that's basically just sharing what the building is in. Operating supplies, again, that's gloves, things of that nature. It's not office supplies, and that can be used as consumable. Cell phones, 2 cell phones in that account. Telephone and internet is split between all the departments that occupy the Warren Cruz Training Center, so that number gets split between them. Equipment rental, in case he needs to rent anything. Advertising would be, he's advertising for, plots, replots, things of that nature. Utilities, contracted services, inspection plans, that'd be your Bureau Veritas type thing. Now, I will tell you this much. We are interviewing another company that does it. It's local, more local out of Victoria. They seem to be more cost efficient. We're trying to see if they do the same things that Bureau does for us. If they do, we're going to give those guys a shot to come in and do that. Bureau has been kind of kicking us to the curb a little bit. So, and I'm not going to hide the fact I've dealt with Bureau before and was never really happy with them. So, but I've let them go here in Kenedy because we don't actually have a certified building person to do all that stuff. Insurance for the buildings, general liability, equipment, errors and emissions, all that's cost of business. Vehicles, repair and maintenance on the building, lot maintenance and demolition. Okay, so this one right here, we budgeted 12.2 last year, we spent 42.8, and I'm only budgeting 15, and people are probably saying, why? It's real simple, okay? If I budget a lot of money there, the message I send is I'm demoing the city of Kenedy. I'm not going to demo the city of Kenedy. What we're going to do is, I talked to Mr. Alvear, and we're going to take a different approach in the city of Kenedy. We're going to start doing what we're doing with every building. Before you even demo a building, you have to go through a process. You have to go through writing fines. You have to go through advertisements. You have to go through liens. You have to go through all this kind of stuff. And we're going to continue to go through all that. But instead of coming to the city council and saying, okay, we want permission to demo this building, what we're going to start doing is say we want to foreclose on this property. We want to call the lien. And then we're going to start foreclosing all these properties. Every last one of them in the city of Kenedy has a substandard structure on it that does not pay their fines, it does not clean it up, I'm going to foreclose it. Then I'm going to turn around, I'm going to put it in the paper under the terms and conditions of the state of Texas and the government code, and we're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And we're going to tell that guy, as you all open those bids at an open meeting, it is going to be a condition of the sale or the purchase that the new owner demos the substandard structure. And then they're going to be given a reasonable amount of time to put a brand new structure on it. All in writing, all legal, and it takes money out of the city. It keeps money from coming out of our coffers, and it pushes that cost onto somebody who wants that lot. Developers can demo Kenedy, not the city. And so that's the strategy we're going to start moving forward with. There are some things that are going to need to be demoed that we are going to have to demo. That's why we put money in there. But the strategy is that I've seen that strategy work very well. People know they're going to get foreclosed on. A lot of times they'll do what they got to do. All these absentee owners that we have in town that don't care about their properties, absentee owners, that's fine. They can be absentee owners. City King's going to have a lot of property, and then we're going to sell it out of bid, and then it's going to get cleaned up. We're going to get new roofs, new housing for our residents, and attract new people. That's how we're going to do it. And it's all conditioned on the sale. We put it all in the document. You have X amount of time to demo it, X amount of time to build, and they don't get the title until they do it all. So, and yes, I've done it before.
Do we have structures that are at that point?
There's a lot of structures in the city of Kenedy right now that I'd love to get my hands on the foreclosed properties to do this with. Because it's we have a lot of valuable property in the city of Kenedy that people have put structures on and let them go to pot. And it is degrading the overall aesthetics of the city of Kenedy. And that is something that we are going to get very tough on in this year. Very tough. If I was hated before, we'd be more hated now.
But what I'm asking is, do we have properties at that point?
We don't have properties that we're ready to foreclose on, if that's
We
what you're
don't.
asking. No, not yet. But we're going to start going through. Mr. Albiar knows we're going to go through these steps. And we're going to walk through these steps. And when we get to that point, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have all of our ducks in a row. Because you have to wait. Before you foreclose, you have to wait a certain period of time before you can call. And then you have to, once that time goes, then you can go through the foreclosure process. So,
Does the new structure have to be a condition of the sale? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't have anything against the vacant lot as long as it's maintained and it's clean. You know, as long as it's the owners keep it mowed and it's in, you know, it's not creating a nuisance or a hazard. But I was wondering, would there be any possibility that we would sell these properties with the condition of demolition, but without the condition of having to erect a new structure within a time frame?
well, for the most part, Mayor, what we want to do is we want to be firm, fair, and consistent. We want to set the bar and our expectations, okay? If we set our expectations to be just demo and do this, we're not going to get anyone who's interested in the property, and then we as the city are going to be left with a bunch of substandard buildings on property, and I can just imagine the uproar from the residents of the city taking all these properties and all these substandard buildings that they own, okay? So we don't want that. Most of the people who buy these things are developers. So what they do is think of it as a tax sale, okay? When you have a property tax sale that goes up, everybody comes out of the woodwork because they've researched it out and they see this piece of property that's worth $100,000 that I can get for 10 grand, and I can pay 10 grand, get this, do this, flip it, and make 80 grand. Well, that's the same way with this. We get a piece of property, let's say, for 3 grand because we foreclosed on it because of all the fines and the fees they didn't do it, and it has a building on it. A property owner comes in, a developer comes in, and he says, okay, if I have to demo the building, it's going to cost me $8,000. Okay? And then if I build a new building, I can put a $130,000 building on it. I can now sell that property for $160,000. I can take the $8,000 cost me to demo, roll it off into my sale price, and I can get my money back off that. It actually encourages development, which is really what we want as a municipality. We want to see development. Because at the end of the day, this is what we're faced with. We're not New York City. Okay? And I say it like that because New York City did rent control. We can't do rent control. So how do we change the market? See, back in my interview, I talked about changing the market, the paradigm of where we are. How do we change this paradigm as a governing body? One way we do this is by doing things that will influence the market. By doing this, and by people getting buildings or property at a discounted price, we're bringing in development that comes in at a lower cost than what's currently out there. So that 1,500 square foot home that you can go buy off of School Street for $180,000, I can get it over here now for $120,000. The developer makes out like a bandit because his costs were so low to begin with, and then the potential resident in Kenedy that's either here looking to upgrade or someone looking to move to Kenedy finds a piece of property that's $120,000. What happens is the more new pieces of property you have that's below the asking price in the market, it drops the market value because nobody wants those $200,000 homes anymore. And what happens then is the real estate people and all that, they have to lower their prices to come down. You set a new equilibrium in the supply and demand market. You're shifting the supply and demand curves to where the demand for the buildings is more than the supply is there, and it drops the price. So if we flood the market with stuff, then we infiltrate the market and we control price. What happens then is that people rent the buildings, they rent them out, and they rent them out at a lower price, they can make more money at renting them out at a lower price, but then by the same token what happens is it goes in competition with the apartment complexes that are charging $900 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. It's unheard of in the town size of Kenedy. Okay? $1,200 for a two-bedroom apartment that's less than 1,000 square foot. It's just unheard of. Those are oil field prices. Everybody in the city of Kenedy came in here with the Eagleford and they said, oh joy, I can throw up anything I want and the sky's the limit, oil's going to pay it, and that's true. Oil throws money around like it's growing on trees. But when oil pulls out, everybody still wants that dollar, and guess what? You have the guy who's working in your hole repairing your water line for $15.50 an hour, trying to find a home, take care of his wife and his 2 kids, and he can't afford the apartment over here because it's $1,200 a month, and he can't afford that if we don't take for his baby. So this is how we do it. This is how we do it legally. So yes, Mayor, we could take that on a case-by-case basis as the governing body. So for example, if Sam Q. Public bought it, and he had a house over here, and he bought the slot over here, and he wanted to rezone that, and that's all he wanted to do, make a bigger lot, the city council could say, okay, we'll make an exception for you for doing this because you take care of your home over here, and your home looks nice, and you're just wanting to expand it, that's fine. But we really just don't want to encourage people just to buy and demolish and just leave vacant lots, because eventually what happens is what we've got. We've got our guys running around mowing everybody's yard. And this is why Kenedy is the way it is. Because your code compliance runs around mowing yards instead of doing code compliance. So we've got to get out of the yard mowing business. And this is how we do it. We put this off on people, and we make it a bargain for them. So I hope I answered your question. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on. We got 80 more pages to get. Street Department. So Street Department had $1.561 million. He spent every penny of that. And he has a balanced budget of 0. So we have the salaries of $410, we have health insurance at $104, payroll taxes $31, TMRS $38, workers' comp insurance of $18.7. We do have some people in there with longevity, so we've got $22.50, which is a benefit to our people. TWC, we have pre-employment, office supplies of $600, uniforms of $8,400, fuel and oil $10,000. Price of oil, is going up. Gas is going up. I paid $3.19 this morning. Janitorial supplies $5. We don't have any janitorial supplies in this department. Operating supplies $10,000. Again, that's just stuff that's not office supplies or materials that he uses and consumes. Diesel fuel. Okay, so we have a diesel tank. That's what that is. That's his expense for the diesel that goes into the diesel tank that we have. Okay. Materials of $35,000. Of course, that's his subgrade, his base, his asphalt, all that kind of stuff. And that number may look low, but when we talk the street department, the water department, and the sewer department, those 3 departments have about 3 to 4 line items where you have all this stuff intermixed. So you don't have to have $100,000 in materials on the material line. Because as we go on down, we're going to see other things where there's materials are included in that as well. You got cell phones, telephone, internet, equipment rental, in case he needs any equipment that he doesn't own. Utilities, he's responsible for the lights around town. Solid waste collection is the roll-offs at $33,000. We upped that this year to just in case. Permit renewals at $600. Just put that in there just in case you needed anything. Buildings, general liability, equipment, errors and omissions, vehicles. Again, all that's just his allocation of our total dollar. R&M building, in case he wants to help remodel the building down there at Juan Cruz. Signage, that's signage around town. He's going to start working on more signs. Street signs, stop signs, yield signs, one-way signs, all that kind of stuff. Some of it is actual new signage. Some of it is skins. Some of it's the poles, things of that nature. So right here, street repair and maintenance. I got $30,000 there. Again, that includes his asphalt, his subgrade, and all that kind of stuff again. So the same stuff that was in that materials line item was in that street repair line item. That's usually that one right there we allocate, quote unquote, for potholing, basically. It's a special thing. R&M equipment, R&M vehicles, maintenance agreement, contracts, dues and subscriptions, training, seminars. Mr. Hernandez and I did discuss something. Mr. Hernandez is a very educated individual about building roads, and he gains that experience from TxDOT. So I can never say enough. We're very lucky to have him in the city of Kenedy. I know he didn't have to come to work here when he did. So it's just a blessing that he did. But he learned a lot from schooling about types of asphalt and subgrades and base and things of that nature. He and I talked about that, about possibly starting to educate our team that way, whether he conducted the classes or whether he found classes in that. And so we're going to begin moving in that direction with our street crew, teaching them about these type of things, getting them in classes so they can learn about the various types of materials and how they work and what conditions they work in and those type of things. So I think that's a really good thing. Purchase of equipment, $100,000. It's a long list of stuff. Like I said earlier, the director's got stuff this year. And so Mr. Hernandez is getting stuff in purchase equipment. So his purchase equipment is, we're looking at buying a new skid steer. We have one. It can never hurt to have 2 skid steers in a municipality, especially one our size, with as stretched out as we are. Then we're going to get a milling attachment for a skid steer. So we're going to mill Graham Road. We're going to get a smaller milling attachment to go with this so we can actually use our own skid steer and mill our own roads here and there, little things like that. He'd like to have that, so I approve that for him. Then we're going to look at getting a, see if I get this right. Help me here. Shredder.
Boom shredder.
Thank you. Boom shredder. Thank you.
A what?
My brain. A boom shredder. Okay, so a boom shredder goes on the back of a tractor. It reaches over, and it keeps our guys safe, and it can do steep inclines and that kind of stuff. So, for example, the issue off of 5th Street that we all have seen and all been made aware of, boom shredder. Boom. Takes care of that. That's what you use. Rather than backing the bat wing up to it and possibly losing footing or whatever, take your boom shredder. Safer for the individual, gets taken care of. So there's that. I also got a tractor. And then I told Mr. Hernandez, since we're going to be taking over the airport mowing and things of that nature, I told Mr. Hernandez if he had enough money left over, he could get another tractor and another back shredder. So it doesn't hurt to have them in this town. We do an awful lot of mowing on the sides of the highways and things of that nature. The more we have, the quicker we can get it done. So anyway, so that's there.
So you're getting a tractor as well?
Yes.
Okay, a tractor?
Yes, a tractor and a back wing. So it'll be 2 tractors, a back wing, a boom shredder, a skid steer, and a milling attachment for the skid steer. But the skid steer will come with a bucket anyway, so we'll at least get a bucket out of it too. So that's the purchase equipment line. The vehicle purchase line item, I asked Mr. Hernandez. We've got a situation in the city where we need a couple of vehicles to kind of move around. It's kind of interesting. Some people asked for vehicles this year, and I didn't want to go out and buy a whole bunch of vehicles. So Mr. Hernandez has a unique situation in the fact that his guys, when they're doing potholing, right now what they have to do is they have to, if they get the type of material that most municipalities use and TxDOT uses, comes in a bag, you take it, throw it in the hole, you do that, they're going to have to reach over to the back of the bed of a truck and pick it up. And those bags weigh about 8 pounds, like a sack of concrete. So you've got guys bending over, lifting with their back 80 pounds. You will see that's going back injuries. We don't want that. So I asked Mr. Hernandez to go out, even if it's used within a reasonable number of years, to find a work truck, a 4-door work truck with a flat work bed on it. And you've seen those. They're the flat. C&M does the job of putting the bed on there. It's flat. It's expanded metal, and they have the grate and all that kind of stuff. So what he's going to do is he's going to do that. Then what he's going to do is he's going to take one of his trucks in his street department, and he's going to replace it with that truck. That truck is then going to move over to the Parks Department. And then the truck over there, we're going to move and we'll give it to Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins wanted a truck to where you can have a guy run around town, have some things on the side, and we'll let Mr. Higgins outfit that truck however he wants, do whole body makeover, has little doors on the side, those kind of things. And then he can keep stuff in the side of that kind of thing as well. Kind of like our chief's assistant chief's truck is sitting out there and make it look like that. So we're going to kind of work some things around this year so that everybody can have a little bit of something, and then we're going to relook at some things next year. So that's what that $50,000 is in there for. And then, engineering services, well, we got to have that every once in a while for the roads. And then down at the bottom, $550,000. I told you all that we would do 5 roads this year. I put money in the budget to do 5 roads this year. That it would be 5 roads at milling and 5 roads at chip seal. So a total of 10 roads. So we put the $550,000 in there to take care of that this year like I promised you guys. So we get you 10 roads done. I'll wait on the roads from you guys. There's 2 roads you want in your district. Any questions? Okay. Next line items, pretty easy. Emergency management, $1,000. Chief Ash really doesn't have a lot in there. We just put a little bit of money in there so we have it in case we need it for fuel and oil, operating supplies, telephone in there and that, some equipment issues, things of that nature. There's really not a lot in emergency management that he has, but it's a category that's been around for a while. And I don't mind the category being there, so I don't see any reason to take it out of the budget. So, okay. The library, they have about $4,300, and they spent off $4,300. Again, the library is county funded primarily. We just basically do a little bit here or there. I've been in places where we actually funded the library 100%, so this is actually interesting if we only do this. But their primary expenses is the telephone. They do pay for the telephones here, and then any R&M on the building that they need. We give them a little bit of money for janitorial supplies, things they want to buy for themselves, they don't want to use from us, that kind of thing. So, okay, any questions on that? Okay. So we get into the Parks Department next. We got $432,000 in that department. Was budgeted and was allocated, was $432,000. Again, you got your salaries, your health insurance, your payroll taxes, your workers' comp insurance. We do have a couple of people out there that's been for what? You okay, Counselor? Okay. Yes, ma'am. So we have longevity pay of about $3,000 a year there right now. And in case y'all weren't aware, I don't know, who all is not aware of how our longevity works in the city? Well, I'm paused right there. The longevity pay, just so you know, is $150 a year per year of service. So an employee that's been with us 10 years would get $1,500. Okay, so we have pre-employment screening, we have office supplies, and postage. They don't really know a lot over there. Uniforms, $2,500. Fuel and oil, $4,000. Operating supplies, again, that's anything that they would need for the parks. There's a complex, it's not. Office supplies and that stuff that goes away. Materials are $56,000. You know, it's kind of like lumber, dirt, crushed granite, those kind of things that they would use. Cell phones, $1,400. Several of them have cell phones out there. Telephone and internet, $1,000. Equipment rental, you know, lifts, you know, telescopic lifts, scissor lifts, things of that nature, whatever they would need there. Utilities, they do incur quite a bit of utilities because they get hit for the lights out of the park, so 21.9. That number's going up, which, by the way, I don't know if any of y'all have been paying attention to your electric bills recently, but JEXA, AEP, and them, they were permitted by the state to recoup all that electric that was generated when everybody wasn't receiving electric during Winter Storm Uri. When nobody had electric, they were generating electric, and it cost them billions of dollars, so they get to recoup that. So our take on that's about $7,500 a month for the next year and a half that we have to pay out. So we've allocated that over every department. So your personal electric bills are going to go up as well because we all get hit with that. So just thought I'd throw that one out there. Anyway, so contracted services, inspections, the buildings, got your insurance for that, your general liability, your equipment, your errors and omissions. You can see that as we go through each of these different departments, a lot of the items are essentially the same. It's just how much we allocate to that line item. R&M building is $1,500, equipment is $2,500, vehicles are $1,500. Maintenance agreements and contracts, this is a good one right here, $22,000. Okay, so those brand new lights that we have on all those fields out there, Musco has a maintenance agreement with us. They come out for $22,000 a year. They come out and they take care of all that stuff. We have issues, that kind of thing. So we have a contract with Musco. So yeah, that was
For $22,000.
It's a little less than that, but yeah, it's substantial enough that
Wow.
yes, I didn't do that.
So how How long are we under contract with them?
I believe that's 5 years. So, and that started this year, year one, because they finished the stuff last year. So they actually, Musco actually had the lights that were out at the old things as well. From what I understand from everybody that I've talked to, the ones that we donate, the ones we declare surplus and so on, those are still pretty good lights. And they were under contract with Musco under the same agreement that we have here, just not as much. Because they weren't the... Ma'am?
Did they ever pick up those lights?
Yes, they did.
They did.
They did. Training, $12.50. Sports complex expenses, we kind of had that separated out from last year. We put that line item in there. We could have just rolled all that up into another line item, but I left it alone and just funded it with $45,000. That'd be anything for the sports complex they need. The pellets, the sand, stuff they need to take care of the turf or the concession stand or the awnings or things like that. So we just kind of pulled that out a little bit to see what we're actually spending on just the sports complex versus the rest of Joe Belly Park out there. So that'll give us, again, going back to the revenue part of it, that'll give us a good gauge over the course of 3 years as to what we're spending in that line item versus what we're taking in on the revenue side. So that'll give us a pretty decent gauge. Escondido Parkway expenses, that's the $4,000 a year we pay Escondido Parkway to do the mowing because they do have a boom shredder and they do mow just a couple times a year for us. Purchase equipment, he wants a mower, some weed whackers, things of that nature that he needs out there, so we funded that. And then the vehicle purchase in the Parks Department is not for a truck, it's to get them another gator. I wanted them to have another gator, so they have another gator to go around with a dump bed and things like that. So we put money in there to fund that for them. Okay? Any questions about parks? Very good. Moving on, municipal court's your next one that we're looking at. $206,000 is what they were given. They spent all $206,000.
Lynn,
Mr. Lynn.
Yes. Sorry.
I have a question on the,
Parks?
on the sports complex expenses. Why do we pay for that and not 4B?
Why do we pay for what?
Same thing. The expenses.
The expenses.
Why do we-
The $45,000 not for me?
I don't know, is what I'm saying.
Okay,
And
all right.
Parks Department, is it the same, like 4B is paying for it, basically? Or-
Not really, no. Okay, so this is where we get into what do we have, why do we have it, what can they do? Okay, so you have an EDC and you have a 4A, which is pretty much typically all this, and you have a 4B, which can do parks. Okay, I'm just going to stand here and tell you this. I do not agree with the 4B picking up operational expenses at the park. Okay, if we want to put in a backstop that costs $100,000, I agree 4B should kick in on that. But if I'm buying pellets to put on the field because it's normal maintenance, no, I don't want my 4B dollars going there. That's $45,000 that I can take from 4B and put someplace else that's more beneficial to the city of Kenedy, because their job, technically as an EDC, their job is not to take care of these parks. Their job is to provide and bring economic development to the city of Kenedy. And we've got to get the 4B doing that.
That makes sense.
Yes, so that's why. Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so we've got the municipal court, $206,000. So we have salaries, health insurance, payroll, TMRS, workers' comp. Just so you know, we only have one employee in the court. That's Ms. Glinda. We do pay Judge Azzo Party, but that's on down the contract. So all those numbers are just for her. Longevity pay, TWC, just in case we have to hire somebody else. Office supplies, we allocate $500 to them, just in case she needs special supplies, folders that we don't buy for the normal city. Postage, janitorial supplies, operating supplies, again, anything that's not the other supplies that she can use and consume. Telephone and internet, equipment rental. She was renting, there was a kind of like a postage machine they had that was in there, but I'm trying to get rid of it. Insurance, bonds, and notary. She's a notary, and she has to be bonded, so that's what that's for. Utilities, $5,500 is the court's portion of the electric bill that we bill them. So based upon how much space they have. Judge Azar Party's contract, $30,000. They don't have any contract labor. Our court prosecutor, $15,000. Criminal fees. So when we collect, when you get your reports every month, you see the money we get to keep. There's always an amount. It's always much more, and then we get to keep much less. But that much more part is the criminal fees. So we do have to pay the state of Texas on stuff. So insurance, buildings, liability, errors and omissions, repair and maintenance in case she needs anything done over there. We put a little money there for her. Dues and subscriptions, any books, or she's a court clerk. She's a certified court clerk, so she's a member of the Certified Court Clerks Society, thingy floppy. So that costs money there for that. We pay for that. Jury witness fees, if they ever have a trial, got to have money there for that. We do have to pay for her training, so you do put that in there. Types of training she needs. Property, plant, and equipment purchase, just $400 in case she needs to buy anything. And then they have an operating software that they've been using. So the annual fee on that's $3,800. So that's what that is. Eventually, they're going to be on the cloud using Encode. So that fee will just get rolled into that Tyler Technology fee that we pick up. That'll just be their portion of the expense of everything. Any questions on the municipal court? Okay, engineering department. If it's okay with y'all, I'm just going to, instead of going line by line on this, I'm just going to jump and cut this one in the head real quick. I asked the city council to create an engineering department. Hiring a civil engineer for the city of Kenedy, even though we pay them $76,900 and all these other expenses, will save us a couple $100,000 a year. When we peg that number to the one engineering firm, it will save us millions of dollars a year. We don't have an engineer right now because I've been yet to find one who is a registered professional engineer that wants to come to work for us. But I'm still actively looking for one. So I keep this open with this number being funded for $160,000. Everything in here has been truncated down. Councilor Sines remembers last year we put over $300,000 in this account. So we cut it all way down. I didn't even do the engineering tech this year, just the civil engineer, and then all the associated expenses with that. So the moment I find someone who has a PE certification in the state of Texas that wants to be part of our growing family here, I'm going to bring them in, and it's already there. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about this department or anything? Why we're doing it?
If we change that 76 to 100, would we increase the likelihood of finding that PE?
Yeah, the city manager will make $100,000. I'm not going to pay anybody $100,000. I don't make $100,000.
You'll have to take that job.
All right.
So we got kind of a cap there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, unless you guys want to override me and tell me to pay somebody more than you're paying me, I'll do whatever you say. So.
Can we lower it?
Huh?
Can we lower it?
Can you lower it? No. I hate to say that because no, you can't. 70. I'll tell you what I do is, my numbers are pretty accurate for this area. This is the coastal Bend region's average number for a civil engineer that's a professional engineer in the state of Texas. It's not the average number for the state of Texas. That's a little higher, but it's the average number for down here, which includes Victoria and all those municipalities down that way. So we're paying a pretty decent amount
I was
of money.
thinking if you could get a civil engineer for $76,000 a year, you better jump on that.
Yeah.
Full-time civil engineer.
What we really need is what I'm hoping for is that civil engineer has 40 years of experience that's looking just to keep his brain active and wants a job but doesn't want, and is willing to come to Kenedy. But
My brother's a professional engineer, and that's why that figure caught my eye. He recently retired from the city of Austin, and I can say that his salary is considerably higher than that.
They do make considerably more.
Probably part-time position.
Well, hopefully we will find that right person, the right fit for the right opportunity, so.
Well, and honestly, guys, I know how to pull talent out of the market. Okay, if that's not obvious that I don't know how to pull talent out of the market, I don't know what will be. If I find the right person, they're going to come to work for City Kenedy. I'm not going to let them go anywhere else. So, but that's what I put in the budget. So what's our budget? All right. So moving on. So we have the police department. They have 1.4 million, and he spent all 1.4 million in his budget. And so you have salaries of 847,000. You got the health insurance of 141, payroll taxes, TMRS. These are all the same numbers, just different, different numbers. Insurance, workers' comp, certification pay is like Officer 1, Officer 2, things of that. They get a certification. They get a bump in pay for that. That's actually a line item in the chief's budget. So, and just so you know, that's a new amount. So in the salaries amount is every officer that we have, including Chief Ash, and any certification pay that they're currently getting is in that top number. This is if anybody gets any new certifications. And Chief Ash asked to lower it because he said he didn't think there was a lot of officers that were going to be getting any more higher certifications this year. So we kept it there just in case. So, longevity pay, a lot of the officers have been around. So we have a high longevity there, which is good. Office supplies, uniforms for the officers, fuel and oil, $25,000. Janitorial supplies, $1,000. Operating supplies, $5,000. Investigation fees, that stuff that goes along with the investigation. We don't budget this line item. Police special revenue, funds expenditures. That's stuff the chief has whenever he confiscates money in that he uses, and if we do spend any money, we put it in there. Cell phones, 14,000. All of our officers have cell phones. Telephones, 10,000. Equipment rental, $10,000. So we're good there. Travel expenses, $750. Utilities, $7,600. Contracted services, maintenance agreements, that's just services that they have, they're contracted out with. Property insurance, errors and omissions, auto liability, physical. Law enforcement has a separate liability insurance that you have to have, so that's what that insurance law enforcement liability is. And R&M buildings, equipment, vehicles, dues and subscriptions, same thing. Some of them are, the chief is a member of society, we have to pay for that. Physical exams, officers have to have that. Training, staff, seminars, $4,000 in there for training and staff. And then we get down to the last two items, purchase equipment and purchase vehicles. So this year we're buying 2 brand new police vehicles. We're looking at Ford F-150s. I'm not happy with the Explorers. And the city of Kenedy has no vehicle replacement program. So we're left buying vehicles as we need them right now. Beginning in next year's budget, I am going to force money to go into a replacement program, especially for the police department, so that every so often we've already got the money there to buy the vehicles with. So this year we're getting 2. We have 2 older vehicles. There's a special reason why we're definitely getting 2 vehicles this year. We're getting another officer this year. We are looking at getting another officer this year. We're looking at getting a furry officer. Chief Ash has found a program where they have a grant that will give us a drug dog, and it will not cost the city of Kenedy anything. We're trying to get this grant, but I have committed to Chief Ash to get a dog anyway because I want a dope dog in town. I think having a dope dog in town, as they call them, is a huge benefit to the city of Kenedy. It'll help our officers out. And it's a gateway to see if we can actually move on to the next step canine as well. But this dog will be, the breed of this dog can be anything. It can be anything from a Malinois all the way down to a Beagle. So, whereas most of the other canines you see in municipalities, they're Malinois or, and I know I'm saying it wrong, or German Shepherds. But I think it's a huge benefit for the city of Kenedy. I was actually shocked when I came here that we did not have a canine. So one of these vehicles, we're either going to convert one of these vehicles to a canine unit, or we're going to retrofit one of the Explorers to a canine. So, but we are going to get 2 new vehicles this year. That $50,000 is for the equipment for the 2 vehicles.
We did have a dog in the past. And what happened with the dog was that he didn't get enough activity. He was not worked enough. And we ended up giving that dog away.
Had that same thing happen in the municipality. Okay? Dog was free. It's a shame. However, tone at the top. That dog didn't get enough work because of the leadership. We have a chief of police who will take care of this dog.
Well, the thing is this, if we're going to go into that investment, we have to have a guarantee that it is going to happen, because if not, we're going to end up down the same road that we had in the past. And that was a shame that we gave that dog away.
The good news is that this would be a grant-funded canine, I believe, hopefully.
That's what we're going for first, right? And if not, we've got money in the budget to pay for it.
I have a question.
I will tell the city council and the mayor this. As long as I'm your city manager, I guarantee you that dog's going to be taken care of.
You have to have a program to go with the dog.
Yes. And we also have at least one officer who is interested in being its handler already. So it is something that we're looking at doing. I also have talked to Chief Ash about it, and he and I are actually in negotiations on it. I don't know how many of you have ever seen Chief Salas's truck from Karn City. There's no noticeable markings on it. It's got the reflective markings on it. I like those, and we're looking at doing that. I also am talking to Chief Ash, and this is a little premature for everybody, but just now I'm looking at changing the colors of the vehicles, buying white vehicles and importing them from black and whites to maroon and grays, with white, bringing the city of Kenedy colors to our police department vehicles as well. But that's something Chief Ash and I need to work out first, see how it's going to look, see if it's going to be feasible to bring to the council for their approval. Right now, I just want you to know in the works of looking at it.
Is that something that would be phased in as new vehicles were purchased, or?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Chief Ash and I both agree that we're not going to retrofit vehicles we have with color schemes. That's too cost prohibitive. You do it when you buy a new vehicle and you phase them in, and as you take the old black and whites out of service, you bring in the new ones. I think it would, the reason why I'm going this road, and I'm looking at this just so you all know, is we need to be as community-centric as we can. Black and whites do not send that message, in my opinion. When you have a vehicle that our police are driving, that's the colors of the high school, and takes that, it becomes more community-centric, in my opinion. It's just a psychological thing. So, anyway, I just put that out there. Other than you know, that set aside, on the actual budget, anybody have any questions about that?
I just want to say I'm glad that we're hopefully getting a canine program. I believe we only have one canine in the entire county, and it belongs to the sheriff's office. We don't want to go down that rabbit trail. The only question I have is this budget enough?
Yes.
Okay.
For now.
Because if we get a canine, we all know there's drugs everywhere in this town. They're
Yes.
everywhere.
This
You will
budget,
not
So I think that canine is going to have plenty of work.
work.
this budget includes cost of the overtime that's mandatory for the officer that is selected for taking care of the animal, the training for the animal, things of that nature, exercise, vet visits, all that kind of stuff that they need. Also, keep in mind, any funds that are confiscated can also go into all this as well. Chief can spend those funds within the department.
I mean, you know me. I want to make sure that they have what they need.
Well, Chief and I have been talking about a canine since day 3 of me being in the city of Kenedy. That's how long we've been talking about it. And originally we were talking, I wanted a mountain lion.
I know people.
I will get that.
I know people.
Originally I wanted a Malamar. When Chief Ash came to me with the idea that he had found somebody with the grant. It just seemed to be no brainer. So, anyway, anybody else got anything?
This is a roughly $250,000 increase for the police department, and I'm glad to see that, because I hope with the additional resources, they'll be able to do a more effective job. And I know it's a priority. It should be a priority.
Yes, sir. We do have, and let me say before we move on to the water and sewer department, we have the best police department of any municipality I have seen in 6 states. And I'm going to say it just like that. And I grew up with the police. Chief of police was a personal friend of my grandfather's. No, these guys that we have here, top notch. And again, that comes from leadership. So we have a good chief. So that rounds out the general fund. Moving on to the next section, which is the water and sewer fund. Start with the revenues, like we did in the general fund. It's kind of a little more truncated here. If y'all remember, Winter Storm Uri, we did some things to benefit our residents before we went some revenues. Okay, so our revenues way down. Given our current water rates in the city of Kenedy, I anticipate on these proposed numbers here, I'm looking at us being able to collect about another 10% over last year on the municipal water sales. I think that TDCJ water sales will be about another 15%. Ashland's about another 15%. So I'm thinking we're going to probably be about 5.1 on our water sales, which is something we're going to talk about more here in just a moment. The sewer sales, I figured, we'll be about 5% on the municipal, keeping the numbers, the increments the same for the sewers and water, 15 on TDC. Ashland the same. Now we do have this one line item here, liquid waste disposal. Didn't budget it last year. 2020 did $45,000. Put $30,000 in that line item. Just so you know, a lot of municipalities in the state of Texas do this. It's legal. As long as your sewer plant can handle the inflow, you're good. As long as your sewer plant can handle the extra microbes, it's good. Take people like porta potties. They got to dump. So what we do is we charge them to come dump at our sewer plant. And they come and they dump their tanks in our sewer plant and we bill them. So that's what that is. That's what that liquid waste disposal sales are. We're going to start doing that in the city of Kenedy again, making the offer for people to come here to dump. I'm projecting $30,000 in revenue, which is, you charge $100 per 1,000 gallons, so it's roughly about 300,000 gallons of sludge for the whole year. Mr. Higgins and I have talked about it. He's got a wonderful plan as to how to make this happen so that it doesn't harm the bacteria in our racetrack and things of that nature. He has done this before. It was very successful before. So definitely we're going to begin looking at that. Water and sewer taps, kept those numbers pretty much static from last year. Reconnect fees, kept them static from last year. Again, as we grow, last year things kind of, with COVID, things were all wishy-washy. Sometimes you had growth, sometimes you didn't. So at the end of the day, we're looking at about $8.341 million in revenue. Now, before I take questions, there's 3 sheets that I gave you. These sheets have a bunch of numbers on them. Second page has some things highlighted in blue. And third page just has a very short thing. Okay. I'm not going to go over this too in depth tonight. I'd like for y'all to review this before our council meeting on September 14th. If you have any concerns, I would ask that you talk to me about it in my office. What this is a comparison of our commercial water and commercial sewer rates. Where we are today, where I want to be. And I took our top 10 customers. Okay? So we have roughly about 150 commercial businesses in town. I only took 10 on here. And on that very first page, that number highlighted in yellow, that's your increase in revenue. Okay? On 10, not 150. So when we meet on the 14th, there's going to be an ordinance on that agenda to go to those rates that I'd like to see the city of Kenedy at. By doing this, here's what you don't have to do. You don't have to raise taxes. So you can stay at the no new revenue rate. And allow me to say this, I personally believe we should be at the de minimis rate. But if you do this, you can stay at the no new revenue rate. If you do this, you don't have to raise residential rates. Residential rates can stay static. So all the residents in Kenedy that heard me say about water increase, understand we're not looking at the residents, just the commercial businesses. So look at that. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to me in my office. The revenues that I have just presented to you do not include that. So those numbers that I just went over are not included in this budget. This will be extra. So, any questions about the revenues for the water and sewer? Okay. Okay, so the water department, we gave them $6.4 million. Spent on $6.4 million. We got your salaries, your services, your health insurance, your payroll taxes, team RS, your workers' comp, longevity. Quite a few people there getting longevity. Unemployment, pre-employment drug screening, office supplies, postage. You guys have to send out some notices every once in a while. Uniforms, gas and lubricants, that's fuel. That's just unleaded fuel, just to be clear. The chemicals are the chemicals that they need, kind of like at the water plant, chlorine, things of that nature that they need. Operating supplies is anything that's not a chemical that they need. That's not a material. Okay, so shark bite clamps, C clamps, barrel clamps, things of that nature. Diesel, that's diesel for the tank. Remember, the street department contributed to that tank. Water and sewer both contribute to that diesel tank as well. Materials, that's a Schedule 9 pipe. That's all the materials that goes into the stuff that he has to do to repair a line, replace a line, those type of things. But again, like I said earlier, water and streets and sewer have several line items that has all this stuff in it. So just because you see $138,000 in the materials line item, we don't have to put $1 million in that line. We've got two other line items that have that. Inspection fees, lab fees, is whenever they're testing the water, those are the fees for that. Cell phones for the guys, telephone, equipment rental if he needs anything. This past month or so, Councilor Rodriguez asked me a question, what's this for? Don't we have a skid steer? It was for a stand-on skid steer with the tracks, not the wheels for the drying beds. That's that kind of stuff that would go in there if you need stuff like that, which we're going to get on down a little more. I'm going to explain some things there. Advertising would be if you have to advertise any water outages, things of that nature. Utilities, Our oil plant's not cheap to run on electric. It sucks up the electric, plus we got all the wells that come out of his electric bill. Contracted services, to do anything they contract out. Permit renewals, this is the small one this year. We have permits and things like that we have to do every year or every so often with the water and sewer plants. Insurance for the buildings and vehicles, R&M for the buildings. So see, R&M systems water line, there's another $50,000 there. So I guess think of things like this. You have materials are pipe, chat, underpinning, sand, that kind of stuff that you would use in water line. But then down here in R&M water system lines, guess what goes into that too? Chat, sand, Schedule 90 pipe, C-clamps, things of that nature. Everything gets built into there. It's just a matter of what are we doing and which line item do we build it to. So, just have all the same stuff there. R&M equipment, repair any equipment that he has. Vehicle repairs, again, you never know what's going to happen to a truck. Physical exams, training seminars. We want our guys to be trained. We've got a new training center going. Still got a little bit of work to tidy it up, get it looking really beautiful, but people can come up here and do their training now. Well repairs, $325,000. You never know what it's going to cost if you got to pull a pipe out of the ground or repair a well. New lines, $351,180. This new lines is exactly that. It's new lines. It's not a leak. This is a line item for, we're going to go out, we're going to replace 1,000 foot of water line on this street, or 500 foot on this street. That's what this line item is. But again, what is that? That's pop, chat, all that same stuff that's up in the materials on the line. So you have 3 line items that has all this stuff in it, that he uses. Purchase equipment. This is a good one. $236,000. So Mr. Higgins and I was talking, and he said, I rented a stand-on skid steer, and I'd like to get one of those. So we're going to get him a skid steer, stand-along skid steer, so he can have for the sewer plant, and that's on the other budget. But you have here, he's getting some high service pumps he needs for the water department, and that costs money. We still also have our, RO plant stuff that we've got to get, which is all intermixed throughout here as well. The membranes and that kind of stuff. So some tools that he might need, that's all in that purchase equipment. Engineering services, we've got to have engineering services on, especially for putting in a long line. We definitely need engineering. The GLO grant match expense, that's in there. That's budgeted this year for that water transmission line. That's our match. It's our 1% right there. And then the transfer to general fund and administration, those bottom 2 numbers, that's that number I showed you over in the general fund revenue section. Said that comes from the water. That's that right there. That's where we take it from right there. Questions? Okay. Moving on to the sewer plant. So in the sewer department, we have 1850 is what he was given to spend there, and he spent every dollar of it. We have our salaries, our health insurance, payroll, TMRS, workers' comp, longevity, TWC, unemployment there, drug testing, pre-employment screening, office supplies, postage, uniforms, gas and lubricants. Again, that's unleaded. Chemicals, they use various chemicals down at the sewer plant, all sorts of chlorine and things of that nature to treat the effluent with and to do those kind of things down there, and that's got to come from somewhere. Operating supplies, again, that's anything like chemicals or office supplies that they would use down there, gloves, things of that nature, throwaway towels. Consumable chemicals, we actually put in there an extra $500 just in case there's just something that they have some other chemicals that they use down there. They don't use a lot of it. They don't bill with that account. Materials, again, $35,570. That's your pipe, your chat, your clamps. things of that nature there. Inspection fees, $1,000, lab fees, they do daily, they do testing down there, and they got to pay for those fees there. Cell phones, telephone, $1,000, equipment rental, whatever they need to rent down there, if they need a skid steer or whatever down there. Scissor lift to get up to there, the grates, things of that nature. Sewer plant's not cheap to run, uses a lot of electric, $135,600. Again, that number's gone up because of, we're blaming that on Uri. Solid waste sludge collection. So we broke it out this year. This right here is where they come and they clean out the drying beds. They take all that dry bed stuff. We bought those containers last year. So this is the sludge goes in those containers. They take the container, they empty the container. So that's what that is. That price did go up to $705 a container from where it was. So, and I spoke to the CEO of that company. He and I talked about that. His cost went up considerably. Permit renewals, $12,000. Then you got your insurance, your building, your equipment, your vehicles, your R&M, your R&M systems repair, and for sewer system again, that's repair for anything that has to do with the sewer system, whether it's the racetrack or whether it's the clarifier, or whether it's a line in the field. That's all in there. All that's in there. So it's a second line item that has materials and that kind of stuff in it. R&M for the vehicles they have, physical exams, training and seminars, Mark's certified, and you've got trainings he's got to do down there. New lines, again, that's a new line. That's what that is. That's not a repair. That's not we have a leak over here on DeWitt. That's I'm going to replace 500 foot on DeWitt. That's where that's coming from. So we put more money in there to replace more lines in the city of Kenedy this year. So purchase equipment, that's that skid steer I was talking about, that stand behind, they stand on it, and it has tracks instead of wheels, so it can go over the sludge in there so it doesn't sink in and that. They clean out sludge beds. And it's time the city of Kenedy gets its own vac truck. So that's what $277,000 is for a vac truck. It'll help clean out the manholes, that kind of thing. So Mr. Higgins is getting a vac truck in the new budget year. Mr. Hernandez got a street sweeper this past year. So we're slowly increasing some of the tools we need in the city a little bit to get the guys what they need to take care of the town. Rather than trying to do them all at once. I know it's big hits every now and then. These things aren't cheap, but we're getting some good quality stuff. And this Councilman Rodriguez was pretty instrumental. He and I talked about the particular model and the make of this Timco that we're getting in that. The CDBG grant match, $41,250. That's for the Live Oak Waco area. That sewer project we got going on, that's our match for that. So that's in the budget this year. So other than that, that's that budget. Questions on the sewer? Okay.
I have one general question before I forget. In this entire budget, did we account for a potential COVID nightmare again?
Potential COVID nightmare.
And I say that because,
there really
it
is.
seems like the federal government is not funding much of anything anymore. I mean, they pulled virtual funding from states. So are we going to be okay as far as buying what we need, PPE, different things that we might need for staff, employees?
Well, okay, so money for staff, let me address that real quick. We adopt the budget. We adopt the budget with the salaries that are presented. Those salaries are based on a year's worth of being paid out.
Well, I mean, like PPE, different things that we need.
Right.
Well,
I'm going there. Because salaries are taken care of in the budget. The PPE, we bought a ton of masks last year. And we bought them to give them away to the residents of Kenedy. Nobody showed up to get them. We got boxes of masks. So I got masks. We got gloves. We've got stuff to clean with. That grant that we got that you all voted on the last council, we got our money back for, that paid for a whole bunch of stuff for us.
okay.
So I'm not going to say we're sitting pretty, but we have stuff.
Okay.
So we have stuff to take care of things. So we're going.
I just want to make sure, because I mean, you never know.
Well, you know, we're in a conundrum right now. Okay, Mr. Paxton has stated he's going to sue every municipality and school system that bucks the governor's executive order. Quite frankly, all I'm going to say is this: I tracked the numbers like a dog last year. And I'm looking at the numbers again this year. Last year there was no vaccine, not a single one. But deaths decreased, cases decreased, people got better. Why? Masks, social distancing, washing your hands, all those basic things, and people were still able to go out and live and have fun and do things. No vaccine, and everything decreased. We have a vaccine and we have a spike again. I think the government's got it wrong. But then again, that's not my fight. I'm just your city manager. So we're good here. I will take care of the city of Kenedy. Okay? City of Kenedy will be taken care of. If I have to buck the system and put my neck on the line, I'll do what I have to take care of our staff, my governing body, and the residents. Because that's what comes first.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Okay. Airport. If you remember how I told you how I did the revenues for the royalties, did the same thing for the airport. Right now the airport is not self-sustaining. They're using royalties to fund themselves. But I did do something that wasn't done. I did it last year. I pulled the airport out from our budget. In other words, our money that we allocate for the general fund and the water and sewer that we get no longer goes to the airport. The airport uses airport money to pay for the airport. Okay? But right now they're using royalties. The last meeting, at the budget meeting I had with Mr. Hyde and the board, I told them they have a 5-year plan. I want them 100% self-sustaining, zero royalty money being used. In other words, I want T-hangers, I want fuel, I want all these things that normal airports use to maintain their operations with being used for this airport. Now what does that mean? That means at some point in time we're going to have to build more T-hangers. That means at some point in time we're going to have to do some other things out at the airport. Okay? So when we get to that point, we just need to understand that we need to do these things to make the money so they can keep the royalties elsewhere. But right now that's what they're using. And so what we've done with the airport is the contract we have with Stetson Aviation allows us to reimburse them for some salaries, so we did. We have attorney fees of $2,000, accounting and audit fees of $1,500. Of course, when you do salaries, you got to do taxes, janitorial supplies, telephone, water, sewer, trash, utilities of $5,500. They pay for all that. They do pay their portion of all the insurances. T-hangers do have issues, and they're not cheap issues whenever they happen, so they wanted to keep that R&M up at that level. I didn't see any reason why to lower it, so we left it there. Light maintenance around, that's fine. Grounds upkeep, that's just general stuff. Last year they had a landscaping and mowing. We don't have that this year. Thanks to Mr. Higgins getting his herbicide and that, we can operate underneath his license. And that's another reason why I've approved another backlean shredder and another tractor for Mr. Hernandez, is we're going to take over mowing the airport, and we're going to take over doing all the herbicide out there. It's our airport. We should do it. So we are. So we get to reallocate all that money from that 48,000 there, and that's 7,000 right below it. That's 55. We get to reallocate. So we've got the R&M equipment at 2,000, maintenance agreement contracts at 10,000. He's got a lot of contracts he deals with out there. So we're going to reallocate that 55,000. Here we go. Mr. Hyde had asked me, and I don't see why not. He had said he would like a courtesy car for the people who fly in to be able to use to drive around. So we took $30,000 out of that 55,000, put in that line. So now our airport can have a courtesy car. I think it's a great idea. I took the remaining $25,000 and put it into the airport administration fees. And we're going to use that $25,000 to help offset our costs on chemicals and things of that nature for mowing. So I'm going to buy the stuff anyway. This will help recoup some of that. Runway maintenance of $1,500, and then we're going to get some more security cameras for out there because I think we need them out there. If we're going to have more T-hangers, we're going to need more security cameras. Airplanes aren't cheap.
Tell him I'm selling my F-150 for $30,000.
Your F-150, huh?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Any questions on that? Okay, very good. All right. We're getting into the fun part of it now. Hotel motel tax fund. Okay. This is our monthly numbers that we get for the year. Again, with COVID being down, we estimated last year 589,000. So this year I went with 545. With the oil being down a little bit last year, I just want to be on the safe side, getting that money in. So how are we going to spend $545,000? Well, we got other improvements and the Civic Center project. And what are those? We discussed those in executive session. That's part of that. We've got the Mayo Music Festival, which we are changing the name of that officially to the Kenedy Music Festival. That's going to be what it's called. And it will be Labor Day weekend going forward. Ms. DeSharnas has her challenge to put that together for next year. So we earmarked money for next year for that. Blue Bonnet Days. I believe in Blue Bonnet Days. I believe in Blue Bonnet Days with the Chamber. That was the Chamber's baby all along. The Chamber spearheaded that. Ms. DeSharnas is our point to the Chamber on this. But we're going to commit $100,000 to helping the Chamber with Blue Bonnet Days this year. I think that that's a fair amount to start with this year to rebuild it after COVID. I think maybe next year, and we get the turnout I'm hoping we get this year. I think next year we can increase that and help them out, and they can kick in whatever they want to kick in, and we can make this as big as we want it to be. Again, our goal here is to make Kenedy a town of destination, and Blue Bonnet Days, the Kenedy Music Festival, Christmas at Kenedy, fireworks celebration. These are 4 strategically placed events throughout the calendar year to make Kenedy a town of destination. And that's what we want. Christmas at Kenedy this year, we spent just under 45 last year. And so I budgeted 45 this year. We have a lot of things that are different this year. That's the way it's going to look. We've already talked about it. As far as some of the things that we bought last year, what's different this year, AEP is working with us to run plug-ins down the light poles this year, which will help eliminate a lot of the need for generators, which was over $10,000 of the cost last year. We still probably will need some generators. At some point in time, we may just buy one for the city so we have our own generator, but for right now, we can still continue to rent it. In addition to that, we're looking at some other things that she's got under her sleeve that she's going to come up along with the cat out of the bag. So if all goes well, it's going to be really nice this year again. Fireworks celebration, last year we did $15,000. I went ahead and put $20,000 in there for that this year. If all things remained static and we did that, we then have a little extra to make the fireworks display a little longer. There was nothing wrong with the fireworks display. It was beautiful for those who attended it. But, if we can make it a little longer and get a little more fireworks out of it, it's always nice too. At least I think so. Anyway, so that's pretty good. So, any questions on the hotel motel? Okay. All right. So then we have the tax TERS. Well, that TERS is for Silverback Homes, and that's the area up there behind Walmart. That's we have to pay that. That comes in off the taxes and that. So this is just more or less it's a zero-sum account. Whatever comes in goes out. So anticipating about $36,000 to come in. So that's what we'll just pay right after that. So And then the last page is our bonds, our debt service area. Gives a little bit more of a breakdown on our bonds, where they are, type of bonds, the estimated amount, interest, principal, tax, total, that kind of stuff to hit to. As you can see the numbers along the side, 1.204 million, but then by the time you get down there and you add in the administration fees and all that, it takes up to 1,205,000 that we have folded into the budget. So this is just the supporting documentation for the charge of debt repair funds. So, all in all, this budget is balanced, any questions, comments?
I have one question going back to what we talked about in the earlier part of the evening.
Yes, sir.
The cost of living increase,
Yes, sir.
3%. What if, instead of doing a 3% cost of living increase, we take the amount that we're planning to spend on that increase and divide it equally among all the city employees?
Can't do it. It's considered a bonus. You can't give bonuses unless you set a parameter as to what the bonus criteria is. That's why the city of Kenedy used to do gift cards for people. Those gift cards are considered bonuses. And the city of Kenedy must get something out of it.
So there are no cities that do it that way?
I'm not going to say there's no cities that do it. I'm just going to tell you it's not legal. Okay? Yeah, there's a lot of things. And I'll even go this far. Okay? The hams, the turkeys, we technically not allowed to do that either. Okay? Technically, that's the Public Funds Investment Act doesn't permit this stuff. Okay? So think of it like this, and I'll use me as an example because this usually helps people to see. So I come in here, I come to work, and you say, yeah, instead of giving me a raise, let's give you $5,000. Okay, what do I do for that $5,000? Now you're a good guy, we'll just give it to you. You can't do that. You have to set out the parameters. Mr. Lynn, if you do this, if you bring a Church's Fried Chicken, which we already have, to town, we'll give you $5,000. Okay, now that's set up. Now if I go out and find the churches and bring them to town, then you're justified giving me $5,000. The bonus criteria was set prior to the disbursement of the funds. That's the only way legally you can do a bonus. You can't just say, just because you work here, we're going to take that 3% and divide it out and give it. You can't do that. Most people today, Mayor, they don't want bonuses just bonuses. They want to make money every month that they can count on. So if you take that 3% COLA that we would spend on it, and you divide that equally, well, then they're still at $14.50 an hour. So I get a check for maybe $200, okay? But I'm going to go blow that $200 today on something. But then tomorrow my bills are going to come due again, and that extra $50 or $20 or whatever would have been in my check could help offset my expense that month. So this is why we do this. If we want to look at giving bonuses to our employees, other than the longevity pay, see, longevity pay is a legal bonus because it's pegged to years of service. You have to work here a year before you get that bonus. So therefore, it's a legal bonus.
Right.
So,
my concern is everybody pays the same for a loaf of bread. Everybody pays the same for a gallon of milk, whether you're on the low end of the pay scale or at the upper end of the pay scale. But this 3% increase is going to mean $80 a month for someone down here and $150 a month for someone down here. So the idea is to offset the increases in cost of living, which we all experience at the gas pump or at the grocery store. And it seems unfair. And each time we do this every year, you're increasing the gap between the lowest paid employee and the highest paid employee. That gap increases each time you do a percentage-based pay increase.
actually, your theory is only partially correct. Okay, and here's why. 9 times out of 10, who's your highest paid employee?
City manager.
No. Yeah, okay. You got me on You got me. 9 times out of 10, when you have a group of individuals who are hourly paid, who's your highest paid employee? It's usually the person who's been here the longest, the most tenured employee. Okay? Usually that's the way it works. Okay? So you're not really increasing the income gap. Okay? What you're saying is, I have no experience in water. I can't come in at $20 an hour. Okay? Because I have no experience. I don't have my Class D. I don't have my Class C. Okay? So I can't pay you $20 an hour, but I can pay you $14 an hour. And you can get your experience, and you can cut your teeth, and you can learn this business and grow. People that have licensing usually make more than people who don't have licenses. Police officers that get the training make more than police officers that don't get the training. Okay? That's a choice. If I have 2 police officers, both making $60,000 a year, I'm just pulling the number out of the air here, and Officer A and Officer B knows I can make another $5,000 a year if I go get this. But A gets it and B doesn't. Whose fault is that? That's B for not going and getting the training. Okay? So he doesn't go get the training. He doesn't get the bump. But when the COLA comes in, the COLA is based. So it's B's fault he didn't get that extra $5,000. It's not the city of Kenedy's fault. So the income disparity is not there. This isn't like indiscriminately hiring people at high rates of pay and bringing them in and then choosing other people and bringing them at low rates of pay and purposely doing this. You have to have a set of ranges, your entry level, your mid-level, your upper level. You have to have that. And the people that have been here and worked their way up and gotten the pay increases, some of our team members have pay increases because they have licenses. Because the city of Kennedy gets certification pays and that kind of stuff. Okay? So that's where that goes. You know, people need money every month. They don't need the additional influx. That's what the longevity pay is for. I understand what you're saying. I understand your heart is good in this. Okay? But really, this is the way you do it. You give them 3% COLA, which I will stand here and tell you, I challenge anybody in this room or listening to this voice on the web to show me another municipality in the state of Texas that's going to give its people as much in raises as we are. Okay? I guarantee you, if I or anyone worked for the city of San Antonio, we would not be getting a 3% COLA increase and then a 2.5% merit increase on top of it. We would get maybe a 1.5% COLA and maybe a 2% merit. What we are setting forth here is we are taking care of our people in the best way we can take care of our people for what we have to offer. We are working well within our means to take care of our people. I realize oil pays a lot of money, and that challenges us in our pay scales. But we're doing the best we can, and actually we are doing better than other municipalities, a lot better. People just don't see it. But I talk to people all the time. So I appreciate that. Yeah, that's... No. I'm sorry, man. I mean, you have a good heart. You really do. And that's a good idea.
No, it's just something I've wondered my whole life why, it seems like for working class families that are on the lower end of the pay scale, it's more of a struggle for them to meet the basic living costs, the grocery store costs, than the people that are in the $80,000 range. It's not quite as much of a struggle. So I've always wondered why we couldn't just give everybody the same amount. It seems fair to me.
Yes, I understand. Anybody have any other questions or anything? All right, this is the budget. This is the budget that we will be presenting on September 14th for adoption. I will be putting this out on the web, on the city's webpage, as well as it will be going, the top sheet, the overview sheet, will be going to the paper with a disclaimer that people can go to the website and get the full document. We can't afford to print the whole document, so we put the top sheet in there that gives people an overview of our budget, and they can go to the website and pull everything down. All of it will be on the website, including the information about the taxes and all that. Okay? All right. Anything else? If not, Mayor, Council, thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. That's a lengthy presentation. Well, if there's no further questions or discussion, I will declare this meeting adjourned. The time is 9:10 p.m. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight.